Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the soundbites. Today joining me in studio is John Sayles, who's the CEO for the Vermont Food Bank. Welcome.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to be back.
I am too, because as we said, I think it's been 2 years that you were on. You had somebody from the food bank come on. I'm sure you've been on at least once a year.
Yes, and you're great to have us on. We appreciate the opportunity to talk to your viewers.
No problem. Well, they really are interested in what's going on at the food bank, because I've got so many questions. I don't know where to start. And you just asked me a question right before we got on the air that I'd like to talk about Washington and the impact on you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's just, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? And, and how we first met.
Oh, my goodness.
Do you remember?
I don't remember the first time, because it was probably 23 to 25 years ago.
Exactly, but that's right. Well, you can fill this in. That's all right. I'll remind you.
Yeah, you know, I've been at the food bank now in March, it'll be 16 years.
Right.
That's a long time. But 25 years total in Vermont, and I worked for state government, for the Public Service Department, and then the Agency of Natural Resources, before I had the amazing opportunity to be the CEO at the Vermont Food Bank.
Yeah. Well, you do so much over there. I was looking at your website and I'm thinking, how do you get through the day? It's overwhelming, all the stuff you've got going on, and how important it is.
Yeah, I've got a great team. Yeah. It does feel overwhelming sometimes, but you know, I've got a great team, and you know, we do the best we can with what we have.
Yeah, right.
And that, you know, we're always focused on the people that we're serving.
Right.
So every decision we make is based on what's going to be best for the people we're serving.
That's great.
And reaching out and asking those folks what they need and want.
There's a concept,
right?
John.
Instead of just trying to figure it out for ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I understand, just talking to people like Sue Midner at Capstone and other nonprofits around, that those who have kitchens, that they've seen so much more need.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it must be after, besides COVID, but then you have the flood. What happened with you all during the flood?
Well, we see huge peaks, spikes in demand during the floods. The interesting thing about food security is, you know, when you're already struggling and you lose your house, your car, your kitchen, whatever it is, and you need food, you know, for me, who's somebody who has some resources, you know, you just kind of bounce back from that, right?
Right. Yeah.
You know, it puts a little dent in your savings account and you bounce back. Well, for a lot of families who are living paycheck to paycheck, you don't just bounce back.
Right.
And you need that support for quite a long time. And so that's why we're seeing increased needs still in Vermont, particularly for food. Food is one thing, it kind of replaces other parts of your budget. Because there's food available, you can go to the food shelf or to a meal site or to a kitchen and get a meal, and then you don't have to pay for that, and so you can pay for gas for the car or the rent or the heat or whatever it is that's straining your budget that month.
You know, somebody told me, and maybe it was Sue Midner, that that food is the one thing you can cut back on in your home.
That's right.
And that is usually the first thing that gets cut back on, because as you just said, you got to do the car, you got to do the mortgage, you've got to pay for the kids, whatever. And that's where that food insufficiency comes out. What did I have down here? What is the percentage? Is it one in every?
Well, it's kind of hard to say, but we're saying 1 in 4.
1 in 4
are served by the food bank. Now that doesn't, you know, there's a lot of technical. If you go to USDA, they have a technical definition of food insecurity.
Yeah.
And it's probably not 1 in 4 people who meet that technical definition, but folks who actually need help putting the ends of that budget together, yeah, that's at least 1 in 4 Vermonters. We serve 72,000 individuals a month. So that's a lot of people.
And do they? How does that work? Do you deliver to them, or a combination?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. How does the food bank work? So we're the only food bank in Vermont. We are a statewide organization, and we are affiliated with other independent organizations. So here in Montpelier, Just Basics and the Food Pantry, and almost every town has a food pantry or one close by. And then there's the soup kitchens, and there's after-school programs, and all the senior centers get food from the food bank. And the churches, a lot of them have food pantries. And so the food bank is a provider of food to all of those. We bring in donated food, we bring in food from the federal government, and we purchase a lot of food. And then that gets distributed out to these partners, but we also do direct distribution. We have a program called Veggie Van Go.
Oh, yes, of course.
Which is mobile fresh food. So we have about 30 sites around the state. And
that's great.
Either once a month or twice a month, we show up and cars can drive through and pick up for up to 5 families.
Great.
So all fresh vegetables and sometimes some yogurt or maybe eggs in the past before eggs became too expensive.
Isn't that amazing? It's like I went to a price shop the other day, there was a lot of shelves were just empty.
Yeah.
You know, on the eggs, the egg
Yeah.
place there where they keep the eggs.
So we're also part of a national network of 200 food banks across the country called Feeding America. And we can get a lot of resources through Feeding America. So we have access to donated food from all over the country.
So what did you do during the flood? Because first of all, were you flooded?
Yeah, no, we were very fortunate. We have 3 distribution centers, one in Barrie, one in Rutland, and one in Brattleboro to cover the whole state.
Yeah.
And none of our facilities were damaged
Oh, thank
in the
goodness.
flood. Yeah.
Because I was thinking of you because you are sort of down in the back there, and that has a downward slope to it. I was thinking,
we were okay.
Yeah, good. So, but your supplies must have been dwindling because farmers were just wiped out.
It was really challenging, particularly, we buy a lot of produce from Vermont farmers.
Yep.
We worked with almost 300 farms last year.
Wow.
And a lot of them did get flooded. Particularly, we worked with a number of farms in the Intervale. And those farms, we would purchase what we call culturally responsive foods. So there's a lot of New American communities in the Burlington area.
Right.
And the diets of those communities are different, right? They want certain kinds of eggplant and certain kinds of greens. And we were contracting with growers to grow those kinds of foods. And all that got wiped out. It all got flooded out.
Wow.
And so we had to go around the state and try and find new sources of those kinds of foods.
Good grief.
It's tough on the farmers. It
Yeah.
really is.
Oh, I feel so sorry for them, especially if you're an organic farmer.
Right.
Because it's all wiped out and you have to start over again. That's not an overnight process where poof, I'm organic.
And there's a lot of those sediments that come and settle over the fields have a lot of not good things in them sometimes.
Right.
We'll just say it like
Well,
that.
we'll just pass on that. No discussion on that one. But it is hard to be. It takes a while and dedication to be an organic farmer.
Absolutely.
And your fields have to pass certain tests, and all got wiped out. So that's not good. So you have 200. You have 280 or food shelves. You said around.
Right. Food shelves, meal sites,
right.
after-school programs, senior centers. And that number also includes the schools and hospitals that we partner with on the Veggie Van Goes.
Great, great. Are there a lot of schools out there teaching kids to grow vegetables? I saw an article not too long ago about making that be part of the curriculum, and I thought,
Absolutely.
how cool is that?
We don't do that at the food bank, but there are programs all over the state that do gardening at schools.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I think that because I get a big kick out of knowing what I'm eating is coming from, what is it, farm to plate?
That's right.
When you go in the menu and it says from Joe's farm down
That's
the
right.
street, I get a big kick out of it.
Well, we get to do that at our Veggie Van Goes because we purchased that local Vermont. I was at one in Barrie, actually. It was in the fall. And it was all the items that we had were locally grown.
Nice.
And they had on the sign as people drove up what the items, corn from this farm, blueberries from Mazza farm. So
it tastes better, I think.
It does taste better.
I think.
Well, it's fresher.
Yeah.
And, we have great soils here in Vermont, so it's really nutrient rich.
The one product, and I'm not going to take too much time, the one product that I got the biggest kick out of, because I got it right from the ground into washed off into my, was lettuce.
Yeah.
It is great tasting right from the soil as opposed to being carted from who knows where and sprayed with whatever. And when you actually eat lettuce, it's a goofy, just lettuce, but it tastes fabulous when it's from the garden.
And you can grow it right in a pot, too,
Yeah,
which is nice about lettuce.
We do tomatoes like that. I get a big kick out of it. I was surprised when I tasted it. It's like, what is this? It's lettuce. So I have a million lists here of things that you do I don't want to spend too much time on each of them, but you do 3 squares. You're involved with 3 squares.
3 squares, we do
That's
3 squares.
important.
Yeah, we do 3 squares of outreach. So, in fact, I just looked at the data. In the last quarter, our 3 squares outreach people signed 64 folks up for 3 squares benefits.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's the equivalent, using those benefits is the equivalent of providing 58,000 meals.
John, how many people do you have working for you?
Well, in our 3 squares, it's a team of 3, a mighty team of 3.
God bless them.
So yeah, they spend a lot of time, on the phone or
Right.
even at kitchen tables, helping people fill out those. It's a big application. It's very detailed. In fact, I challenge anyone who thinks that it's too easy to get public benefits to fill out that
Right.
that
They want
form.
your pint of blood.
They want your
yeah.
pint of blood. They want to know, the source of income of everyone that lives in your household and what was it last month and who
Wow.
owns what cars, and it's very, very
Very
detailed. It's very invasive.
Thank you. I was just going to say that. I said, well, maybe I
It
should.
is. No,
But
it
that's not good.
I mean, I always say they don't ask you that for your Social Security.
No, and what are you trying to do? Get them healthy by eating? That's
It benefits us all.
yeah. Well, we should do something about that.
Big fan of 3 Squares Vermont. I
Yeah,
really
and
encourage.
I know a few people who benefit from that, and
Yeah.
they just need the help. It's
Exactly.
Not, and I think I learned this from Capstone: a hand out, not a hand up.
That's right.
That's the best phrase ever.
Yeah, 40% of the people who get 3 Squares Vermont are working.
Yeah, they
And
just
then,
need.
and the balance, most of them are either too young to work, they're children, or they're older Vermonters or disabled and can't
Right,
work.
right,
So the number of people who could work and aren't working, and I get 3 Squares Vermont is very, very small. And that's true nationally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. So then you have Vermont Fresh. Is that a new?
No, that we've been doing that
Have you?
for years. Yeah, it's really a nutrition education. So we do
Right.
recipes. We go into food shelves and help them transform their food environment. So it's not
cool.
just boxes sitting on a counter
Yep.
with stuff in it. So beautiful shelving, nice signage. There's a lot of research around
Nice.
behavioral economics, where if you make the healthy choice the easy choice, people will take it.
Right,
And it's as simple as when someone walks into a room, if there's a beautiful, colorful sign that says fresh vegetables, they'll walk toward it.
Right, for
And
sure.
if there are fresh vegetables
Yeah.
around there, they'll take them.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of that work, and then we create kind of like a Blue Apron or those other things. We
the
create
dinners?
recipe kits.
Yeah. Oh,
They're not.
nice.
It's not. It's not as ready to prepare.
Yeah.
But we'll take all the ingredients for a recipe and put them in a bag along with the recipe, and sometimes some utensils, like a wooden spoon
John,
or a
that's
whisk.
perfect.
Yeah, it's a
Good
fun
for
little
you
program.
guys. Do you get a lot of people? Because this has been bothering me that are homeless, and they're sleeping in the woods or sleeping in wherever they can find to sleep. Do they come in and?
That is a big challenge for our partners. We try to make sure we're stocking at least some food that's accessible for folks who can't cook. So cans with a pop top, maybe something that's kind of a meal in a can, whether it's a, ravioli or mixed vegetables or something that's, it's still hard.
Yeah.
And we don't do, at the food bank, we don't do prepared meals. So there are other programs and communities. I know that Feeding Champlain Valley in Chittenden County, which is our biggest partner in the state, they have a production kitchen, and they produce prepared meals for people who are living outside or folks living in the hotel and motel program.
It's just so heartbreaking to watch. My church is very active. They have a warming. They opened up in the morning, early morning, so people can get warm.
Right.
And then they've had in some of the really below zero weather, they've had people sleeping overnight. And I just made, I have a lobster pot, and last week I made chicken noodle soup, and this week was pea soup.
See, it takes us all. It takes us all as a community. It really does.
It was so cool. I walked in and I wasn't sure, but there were, sadly, and I say sadly because there was a lot of people, more than I thought would be there, and because they were hungry and they wanted some food.
We could do a whole nother show on the housing issue.
Oh, well, I can't.
I'm sure
even
you
imagine.
have.
Yes, we've done that a few times. Housing. How do we do that? And you just talk. I have got to go see Veggie Van Gogh someday. Now, I also read that 211. What does that? Is that for emergencies?
211 is a huge partner and supporter. In fact, we've been advocating in the legislature for some additional funding for 211.
Great.
Last year it was so they could stay open 24 hours. So 211 is probably the best source, easiest source of information on where charitable food's available. I would also direct people to our website, which has a great food shelf finder.
Yep.
It's vtfoodbank.org. But always dial, if you dial 211 and say, I live in Ludlow and I don't have any food and where can I get food, they will tell you the meal sites and the hours of the food pantry.
Nice.
So 211 is an indispensable partner, really. In the work we do.
I remember when they created it, but it's really, if you're low on heat, if it's pretty much anything that's an emergency level that you need help.
That's why we advocated for 24-hour assistance. Sure. If you lose your housing for some reasons, you're couch surfing and someone throws you out in the middle of the night.
Right.
You can't wait. You can't leave a message and wait till morning.
Days. We've lost a couple of people.
I know.
Because it got me crying at home because they died in their sleep in the cold. I mean, what is that about? I really got upset with that. You also talked about the gleaning program, which, of course, I did this. I sound like I did it every year. I did it once, but I was so impressed, and I laugh every time at home. I look at what I'm throwing out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's stuck in my head. You should make people go through a gleaning program.
We've been, at the food bank, over the years, we've done a lot of gleaning programs. We're less and less actively doing that, and other partners are doing it.
Yeah.
In central Vermont, I'll give a shout out to Allison Levin and Central Vermont Community Harvest, who does the gleaning program in central Vermont. Fabulous organization.
Great.
Willing Hands is now doing it in Brattleboro. We still do some gleaning in Chittenden County, and there's a gleaning organization called Salvation Farms, which works in the Northeast Kingdom.
Could you explain to our viewers what gleaning is
sure.
for those of us who had no idea, like me?
Oftentimes, farmers don't harvest everything that grows in their fields. Either there's not enough of a market for it, or the weather wasn't quite right, and the size or the shape or the color of whatever they're growing isn't quite right. Or sometimes they'll harvest a field and then it'll regrow, and before they had a chance to plow it under and plant something new. And so gleaners will just come in and harvest what the farmer's not going to harvest. And all of that goes directly to the charitable food system. So Community Harvest here in central Vermont, they have a facility down at Rogers Farm off Route 12.
Yep.
But so they will harvest. They'll pick and clean and repack the foods that they harvest. For things like onions, they dry them so that they'll last, and garlic, and then they redistribute them to the same partners that the food bank works with.
Yeah, and it's a lesson learned. God,
it is.
This was a couple of years ago I did it, and every time I have dinner, well, there's leftovers. All right.
We're going to use these.
What can I do with this leftover? And I've gotten much better at labeling, so I know what it is I'm freezing. So
yeah, food waste is a big issue.
Yeah.
Americans, post-consumer, we waste about 30% of the food that we buy.
Wow, that's
it doesn't
ridiculous.
get eaten.
Yeah. And here we have 1 in 4.
Yeah.
It just drives me crazy because we're supposed to be an agricultural state, and we've got people actually hungry.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with that.
I would agree with you.
Yeah, it just makes me crazy. I wish I knew what to do. I try to do these shows. Well, you're going to sign me up for something?
I'm going to sign you up for something. I don't know if your viewers can see that, but what I'm holding is
yes, you have to tell me
the
about
Food
that.
Security Roadmap to 2023. This is an offshoot from Farm to Plate.
Oh.
So Farm to Plate is the statewide strategic plan
Right.
for agriculture. And one of the goals of Farm to Plate was food security. And so we've actually created a separate plan. And This plan, which was created with input from over 600 people, individuals in Vermont, as well as lots of organizations. And we have 3 main goals and strategies under each of those goals. And the main goals are what's government and the charitable food sector's role, what's the farming community's role and how can we support them, and then what are community level roles. And literally, if we can do all these things, Vermont can be food secure by 2035.
How do we help you?
So we're just getting started. We're in the legislature now. We don't have a website up yet, but if people are interested, they can contact the Vermont Food Bank at info@vtfoodbank.org and say, I'm interested in the food security roadmap. You can also read the plan. It's online. If you just Google Vermont Food Security Roadmap, then the link comes right up.
Great. I have to read that. I did a little bit before the show, but
there's a lot there.
I would love to get involved with something like that. It just drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And you need to feel like you're doing something.
Well, and the legislators, rightly so, when I go there asking for dollars to do things like purchase Vermont produce and distribute it, they say, well, what's the end game, right?
Sorry.
Well, I know, but really, you're just going to be back next year asking for more money to buy more food.
To feed more people?
To feed more people.
Shame
I
on
said,
you, John.
well, I said that, the solution is right here. We have the solution. We need to implement these things. But in the meantime, we have to make sure that we're continue to feed people.
Some of them must get upset about this because it's 1 in 4. Come on. I mean, that's
no. We get a lot of support in the legislature.
They must because. And besides that, you're helping the farmers.
That's right.
You're just helping everybody in the economy and.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
Right. If we come together and create that really vibrant economy that includes all of our neighbors, then we can reduce the need for things like the Vermont Food Bank.
That's really good.
That would make me happy.
Yes, I'm sure it would, because I don't know, have we talked about all of these programs? Because I'm looking at my list here, but at least the ones I found on the website. Are there more or others that you might want to talk about?
We have some school-based programs, our youth programs. For many years, we've done a program called Backpack.
Oh, yes.
So we're starting to phase out Backpack. Backpack was a small bag of food that on Friday afternoon for kids that were signed up for the program, the counselor or teacher would go and tuck that discreetly into their backpack so they could take that home. The challenge is we do about 1,400 kids a week in Vermont, but there are, I don't know how many, 60,000 school kids or something in Vermont. So we're not reaching as many as we could, and there are other ways to reach kids both in school and out of school, and so we're going to focus on ways we can reach more kids with better food more consistently. I was just at the Winooski School, where they have a big school. It's pre-K, elementary, middle school, and high school all together.
Oh, wow.
But they have an in-school pantry, a school food pantry that the kids can come to, and the families. They open it up every couple of weeks for the families to come. And they have a lot of New American families there, so they stock a lot of the kinds of products
that they like, right?
that those families use and eat. And it's just a real joyous place.
Nice, I bet.
Patrice, the gentleman who runs it, gave us a tour and talked about the deliveries they get from the food bank and the food they purchase from local farms, and just how meaningful it is to the families to have that resource at their school.
Especially if it's the foods that they're used to and that they they like. So
that's right.
I don't think the food bank, and maybe I'm wrong, is involved in this program, but the one they just passed with free breakfast and free lunch, I mean, that must make some difference, I hope.
It makes a huge difference. No, we're not engaged in the school meal program at all. That's a separate federal program. But we helped our good friends at Hunger Free Vermont advocate for getting that passed.
Great.
Hunger Free Vermont worked on that for 10 years.
Yes, I heard them. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, and
it was a
did
long
a
time.
fabulous job. And right now, The governor has taken the funding for universal school meals out of his budget, and we're working with the legislature to try and make sure that universal school meals continues, because it's just been a real amazing success.
Why did he take it out?
Well, I don't want to speak for the governor, but what he said is that it has the taxpayers paying for wealthy kids' lunches at
right.
school.
Well, I must say that was something I was thinking about when.
Yeah.
And then you hear the stories about how they embarrass kids that don't have money, and it's not their fault, mom and dad,
And
whatever.
there's the kids that aren't really eligible,
Right.
but still needed the help.
Yep.
And a lot of kids, even kids with parents with plenty of money, are bringing, let's just say it, crappy lunches to school.
Right, 'cause-
right? And
yeah.
now that they can have a more nutritious,
Yep.
balanced meal at school, and everyone can share that
Yeah,
together.
I've come around on that.
Okay.
Because I was talking to people like you, because I was, well, it's ridiculous. Let them pay, the ones that can afford it. But then when you hear about the benefits, and
Yeah.
and I know some people, same thing. They just send it here, take this for lunch. They don't really pay attention while they're running around in the morning.
That's right.
Trying to get to work themselves. So.
Right. Throw a snackable in the
Yeah,
bag.
yeah,
and
right,
it's
exactly.
Full of sodium and
Exactly. PB&J coming up. Yeah, because I was wondering if you see a difference in that program, that maybe there's not as much demand, or it hasn't made an impact.
Well, I think the offsetting challenges in the economy have created a really consistently high demand for
Right,
charitable food.
right.
But we've definitely seen the differences in schools. If you talk to teachers and school administrators,
Kids
they'll tell
alert
you
and learning.
kids are ready to
Right.
learn. That's right.
Right. Well, I hope they are smart enough to put the money back somewhere.
We're working on it.
But you shouldn't have to fight for it every year.
No.
What would happen if it's not permanently in?
That's right. Well, right
in the
now it is
budget?
permanently in
Oh,
there.
it is.
Yeah.
Oh,
But this is a proposal to
to
take
pull it.
out.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Not good. Leave it in there. Because, well, anyway, they just should, because there's all kinds of studies done about what, breakfast is the most
Oh, my
important meal
goodness.
of the day. My husband tells me that every morning, because,
And he says, make me some pancakes.
yeah, I know. He actually makes his own, but he's always
Does he?
talking, because I don't eat what I should eat. So he's yelling at me. But that they say that, and I'm sure it's true, to get started on the right foot.
Well, and just the research on proper nutrition for young children and brain development.
Right.
We're handicapping our kids
Yep.
from being productive members of our communities by not making sure they're getting the right food at very young ages.
Yeah. So on those meals, I presume there's dietary, somebody's helping the people at the
There are very
cafeteria?
strict federal regulations about the amount of
Good.
all the different nutrients in each meal.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
Well, that's great, because I've eaten in some schools, and they could use some help.
Some are better than others, but I
Yes.
think the trend is
Yeah.
to better meals.
That's good.
A lot of fresh food. There's a whole program of getting Vermont food into Vermont schools.
Well, and don't you hate it when you see kids who are so out of shape, and, because they're eating, who knows, pasta or whatever, and it's really sad when you see them so young to get off on the wrong foot.
It's hard.
Because, yeah.
It's hard. And, our general food system, nationally, doesn't really support healthy eating.
No, it doesn't.
It does not.
No, porks you right out. John, you wrote a commentary a few years ago, and we had talked about this, but I think it's important maybe to bring it back. It was called Oppression and Hunger, and you were talking about what does racism do with hunger, and it was a great article, and I was hoping maybe you remembered it to be able to share with us what the whole thing was about. Because
Sure. I think it's relevant today, too, with the changes in the federal government and, grants being canceled and funding pulled based on language that organizations are using. But what I was talking about is, that the reason that people don't have enough money to purchase food is an economic system that doesn't provide the opportunity for everyone. And that's really what equity is to me. It's about You don't just give everybody the same thing because not everybody's starting at the same place.
Right.
And so if you want people to be able to be great employees and parents and citizens in Vermont, then we have to make sure that they're getting that fair start. And this may be controversial, but you go back 400 plus years and you read the history and understand how our economic system developed. A lot of it was developed in the back of unpaid labor, slavery, and you can trace the wealth from some of that, big banks and things to today. And also the systems to keep, black and brown people in particular, especially back then, but also anyone of lower economic status kind of out of prosperity.
Yeah.
And there were definite systems. It was done purposefully, right? You can look back even in the 50s and redlining,
Right.
Where you could not get a mortgage if you were a black person in certain neighborhoods.
Right.
And it was an official sanctioned policy of the United States government. They wouldn't guarantee that mortgage.
Huh.
The GI Bill, it allowed folks coming back from World War II to purchase homes, and there was a huge surge in home purchase. But because of redlining, black GIs were basically cut out of that program.
Sorry, you're looking at my shocked face
Yeah.
because I never heard that before.
Yeah, there's some great books on this.
Oh my, I have to look into that.
But if you just bring that up
Yeah.
to today, it's really those systems that created these economic disparities, which create hunger. Because hunger is just a lack of money, right? You go to Price Chopper or Shaw's or whatever, the stores, there's plenty of food in the stores.
Right.
It's just that we have a lot of families that don't have enough money to meet all of their needs, including food. And like you said earlier, food's the easiest thing to cut out, right?
Right, for
Mom can
sure.
skip a couple meals so that
Right.
the kids can eat.
Right? Or you buy the cheaper cut of meat, or you buy
That's right.
whatever. And
You go to the bag of
Yeah,
cereal on the
right.
bottom shelf.
Exactly. Right. I've done that more than once. Yeah, that's really, well, I thought it was a great article, and it amazes me. I live in a vacuum, I admit it.
Well, we
and-
live in Vermont,
Well,
which is kind of a bubble in
Yeah,
itself.
exactly. And then I hear these things like the GI Bill, and I feel embarrassed that I don't know, and I should know because I've been here a long time and should pay attention. It's everywhere, isn't it?
It's everywhere. It's baked in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much is baked into us and we don't even know it. Seriously.
That's,
Right?
yep.
Shame on us, but there you go. So I remember, and I've always wanted to do this, you have a hunger action conference every year.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Not this year?
Not this year.
Oh, John.
Yeah.
Just
well,
too much going on.
Yeah, it's one of those balance,
Yeah.
There's a lot going on, and it costs a lot of money to put on a conference.
I bet.
And we wanted, and actually it's not just the money. We could raise money to do that, but it's also our staff time.
Right. Well,
And our program people are spending time creating a conference when they could be out there developing
right.
new programs
Right.
and supporting our partners in particular.
Right.
We used it a lot for training. The food shelf managers would come.
Yeah.
And we do sessions, and what we're doing now is going to go out and actually just have those all the time, all year.
Great. We'll
You
bring
know,
them to the people.
Right now, now we have online learning, and we can create a class, or we can do a
Great.
Zoom class.
Yeah.
People don't have to drive halfway across the state.
Yep.
It felt really good, Pat, for us all to get together.
Yeah, well, I
know?
know years ago, I'm trying to remember, I think you had it in Burlington.
Yeah, we did.
I went to that one. I just went. And I thought it was fabulous.
It was. You get to see, it's like old friends,
Yeah.
and you get hugs, and
And you also find you're not as crazy as you, because you say, well, what do you think about this issue?
Right.
And they agree with you, and you're like, whoa.
yeah, yeah.
Good.
So it's not ever again,
Yeah.
but for this year and maybe the next couple of years, we'll take a little break.
Yeah, because I enjoyed it, and I learned a lot. The idea is to learn, and especially with such an important topic.
Yeah.
Makes me
Well, we're
crazy.
trying to continually make changes that are better serving the people that are out there that we're
Right,
serving.
right.
You know.
How, I know you can't reach everyone because they don't identify themselves, or how do you get as many people as you can to say, hey, I need help? I mean, there must be people out there who just won't.
There are.
Yeah,
there are a lot of our older Vermonter neighbors too. Very proud.
Yep.
Don't think somebody else might need the help more than they do. I'll tell you the strategy that we try and use most is to make getting charitable food as welcoming as possible. So, for instance, our Veggie Van Go, right? It's a no barrier event, right? You don't have to sign up.
Right.
You don't have to show ID. You don't have to prove that you make a certain amount of money. You just drive through. And when you get to the front of the line, you tell them how many families you can pick up for as many as 5 families.
Wow.
We have a lot of folks that pick up for themselves and their neighbors because their neighbors are working usually or have kids.
Right.
And then you get your car loaded up and you drive off. And the volunteers there are always smiling and chatting and welcoming you and happy to see you again.
Yeah.
And we encourage the same atmosphere at our partners at the food shelves. I know if you've ever been to the Montpelier food shelf, they're really delightful people.
Really.
And will do everything they can to help you.
Mine has mostly been a capstone.
Yeah.
Especially with the community kitchen.
Yeah.
At least once a year I go there and videotape a class and watch them do the food bank and pack the meals and stuff because I think that's a great organization, and I love the community kitchen program.
Capstone is an amazing organization. I know now, Sue has stepped down, but they're in the middle of a search, and I'm sure they'll find a great leader.
Yeah.
The community action agencies, the 5 around the state, are really important partners to us.
Yeah, and that's a 24/7 job.
That is.
Whew.
That is.
Yeah, because you never know when you're going to be needed or the food. Now, Sue was telling me, though, that she's seen a mixture of people that she'd never seen before. People come from work dressed in work outfits, and they're in the food bank getting dinner for the family or food. It's really everywhere, and it's got nothing to do with who's behind the McMansion.
That's right. That's right. And it's
everybody's hurting.
Everybody's hurting, and it's increased in particular in the cost of housing. I mean, if you're paying rent, your rent has gone up probably 50% in the last couple of years.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And we won't even get into property taxes. We'll use that for another show.
Right. We'll use that for another show.
Yes, that's a whole show in itself.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so
it's crazy.
It's not just the poorest of the poor.
No.
COVID changed the stigma some too, because
What do you mean?
so many people came out for help. People were scared, right? It wasn't just, I can't afford food. It was, I'm terrified to go to the grocery store.
Right, that's true.
And we had those huge food distributions at the airports.
Oh, my
big
God.
lines.
Yeah.
And a lot of things went to drive-by, so it was a much lower barrier.
Right.
That's when Veggie Van Go used to be a walk-up event. It was like a farmer's market.
Oh.
And during COVID, we transitioned it to a drive-through event.
I always remember that. I think you're referring to the one at the Granite Museum.
Yeah.
There was a lot of soldiers there. They had the guard there.
Yeah.
But they filled these boxes, but you couldn't see the end of the line. It just went on forever.
Yeah.
I really got upset. I thought, oh my God, not all these people. But they did.
People lost their jobs wholesale.
Yeah, right.
And so what happened was a lot of people came out and found some help and realized that it helped and realized that it wasn't a degrading, horrible experience. That the people that helped them were glad to see them and were smiling and were thankful that they came. And so I think people have kept coming back.
Do you go to senior groups and talk to them, or do
I do sometimes, and my staff does. Yeah,
I would think that might be a good place to get to meet some of the people that are just afraid to ask for help.
Yeah,
I am not one of those people. You will get a call from me if I need help. I've learned that in being so old.
That's wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just ask.
Yeah.
And people will help you because they're nice in this state. I really do love this state, and sometimes I get mad about the politics. But when something happens, like the flood, or people just come out of the woodwork and we're all one.
Well, everyone gets mad in their own way about the politics sometimes.
Right.
The food bank is a very, non-political organization, right? We serve everybody, and we get support from everybody.
That's great.
And we're really proud of that.
That's great. And I have a note here about my East Rise Credit Union. That's our new credit union, and they participate in the point-to-point event.
Yeah,
What is
that's another
that?
one that's not happening anymore.
Oh, stop! I remember I was involved in that.
20 years, actually more than 20 years. But when the East Rise was they basically put the event on.
Yeah.
For the food bank, to benefit the food bank, and with the merger when it was VSECU and NEFCU, it just was too much.
Oh, yeah, but too much going on
With
for
the
them.
transitions,
Right.
and so we're talking to them still and looking for a new signature event to do together.
Oh, good.
And they're still huge supporters of the food bank and the work that we
Well,
do.
they're very. I mean, it's a great credit union. So
It is, yeah.
we won't go into the name. We'll just pass on that one. What? I'm sure there's a reason for that, but anyway. But so you're not doing the point-to-point.
We're not doing the point-to-point this year. No.
Well, look at everything.
I
else
know,
you're
lots of
doing.
change.
Yes, I know.
It feels like with COVID actually winding down, we're moving into kind of a different phase.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of change happening.
Yeah. Well, people have seen they can do things differently in
That's
a different
right.
way, and maybe
That's right.
that's a better way. Who knows?
Maybe.
I'm looking at the clock because I want to spend some time talking about Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted to tell people that they really should go on your website to read some of your commentaries, because I think they're excellent and they're right on point. And you talk about with the oppression and hunger, you were talking about defining food justice and things that, like we just said before, we don't think about.
We have a lot of great stories in our blog, a lot of great stories from the people we serve too.
Right.
Which are,
Those are the most effective anyway, because it's from a real
that's right.
Vermonter who's experienced
That's
this.
right. And you can realize all the different types of people that find themselves in a place where
Right.
some help would help.
Well, I was on the Central Vermont Home Health and Hospice Board for a couple of years, and I went out with one of the nurses for her visit. We did 3 a day, and I was told total secrecy, because
Right.
there's privacy, and absolutely. And we went to one, I mentioned a McMansion. I went to a McMansion house, and I'm thinking to myself, what?
Yeah.
What could these people possibly? Well, I found out, and you really can't judge
Yeah.
what's behind that McMansion door. That was a learning lesson
Yeah.
too.
You never
because-
know somebody's story.
Exactly, and
right.
so you should start out with kindness first instead of, because we rode up and I went, oh, come on, what is this? And I found out, and I said, well, just shut my mouth and be sorry. And I felt very bad for the family, and they were dealing the best they could.
Right.
So you just never know.
Yeah.
So tell me, John, I'm going to put my questions away.
Okay.
Because I want to chat about, you mentioned about Sue is going to be on the committee that's being put together to look at the changes that are coming out of
Yeah.
Washington
Yeah.
on all the executive orders. What's happening?
So there's an awful lot happening awfully fast, and it's hard to know what the results are going to be. So nothing so far has directly affected the Vermont Food Bank. None of our federal funding, about 15% of our funding comes from different sources from the federal government. Most of it comes through the state. There's a program, the feds fund the state, and the state funds the food bank to actually do the work. A lot of them connected to Three Squares Vermont. So that Three Squares outreach that I talked about,
Right.
that's partially federally funded through the state, through a grant to the
Right.
food bank. And we don't know how long that funding's going to be there. We also get about 15% of our food that we distribute, 15 to 20%, comes from the federal government from 2 programs. One for older Vermonters, for people over 60 who are income eligible. And then another is we call it USDA commodities, but it's just generally grocery food that goes out to the food shelves to be distributed. Again, we get a little bit of money that comes with that too. Again, we don't know. We've heard now they're passing budget resolutions in D.C. in the House and the Senate. And in both of the budget resolutions, they're calling for billions of dollars in cuts in the agriculture areas. And so the biggest line item in the ag budget in the Farm Bill
Right.
is the SNAP program, which is 3 Squares Vermont.
Oh, right.
So we're expecting there to be at least an effort to have some pretty large cuts in the SNAP program, which is, there's, I'm going to get the number wrong, so I'm not going to say it, how many families. I want to say 40,000 families in Vermont that get
Oh, my
SNAP
God.
benefits. And
That's a very high percentage of
Right,
our
it's-
overall population.
it's about $13 million a month
Wow.
in benefits that come to Vermonters that get spent almost immediately
Right.
in Vermont stores and at farmers markets and farm stands. And any reduction in those benefits, the next stop is the food shelf or the meal
Right.
site. And so if there are large cuts to that, the food bank doesn't have the resources to make up that difference. I mean, that's $155 million a year in money to purchase food in Vermont.
Wow.
And the food bank distributes, maybe $25 million worth of food. So you can see the scale is just
Right.
completely different. We'd have to, quadruple or quintuple our size and then be able to get to everybody. And that's just not really doable.
So are people saying this might happen, or do you know it's on the
Yeah.
chopping block or whatever?
People are saying it might happen. So, I try not to go to what might be and just stay with what is.
So what is this group doing in Montpelier now? Every executive order or whatever that gets signed, they just take a look at it?
They take a look at it and see what's the impact going to be
Right.
On state government and on the nonprofits that are providing
Right.
some essential services, because we have the designated agencies that provide mental health services.
Right.
We've got the federally qualified health centers that are providing healthcare services. We've got, addiction services, homelessness
Right.
services. All this is nonprofits doing these
Yep.
basically state functions.
Right.
And so what is it going to mean if there are restrictions on using funds for those purposes or for those organizations?
Well, I
it's
know
hard
the
to- it's
board
hard to
here
tell.
at ORCA is worried.
Yeah, I bet.
That their funding is going to be cut, and but I haven't heard. I mean, I can't imagine and some of the things you're talking about are so basic. I think there's so many bigger issues that maybe should be dealt with first before you get down to things like people's food.
It's
hope.
hard to discern sometimes the rhyme or reason for the decisions that are being
Right.
made. But we're trying to keep up as much as we can. We've got a great relationship with our federal delegation.
Yes, well, we've got
So we're in
a good
we're in
one.
continuous contact with all 3 offices, and we've got a spreadsheet of all the risks out there, and so we can understand when things are happening. Okay, well, here's where it might impact the food bank. What can we do to respond? And just try and stay agile and flexible.
I had Peter Welch was home,
Yeah.
and I ran into him actually at Simon Pierce. He's walking ahead with some people, and I'm trying to run and catch up to him. I finally yelled out, I said, "Senator, if you don't stop, I'm going to die." So he stopped, and we were talking, and I asked him to come on the show. But I don't know how he does it, but he knows
Yeah.
what's going on.
Well, it's because he talks to us.
Yeah, what does he? He's amazing.
We're sharing information with him and his
Good.
staff constantly.
Yeah.
I've seen him 3 or 4 times
Right.
since the beginning of the year. Because I run into him at places also. I was at the Vermont Economic Conference.
Oh,
and
really? He's there.
He was there, and Representative Ballant was there also.
Yeah. Well, he was excellent on the show, and really, you could tell he was up to speed on what was
Yes.
going on in not big things, but even just the little mom and pop sort of thing. I asked him to do a couple of minutes on getting people to buy local downtown in Christmas, and he did it and got it all out there, and it was really cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know Becca Ballant I know Bernie, but not, chatting as I do with
Right.
with Peter. But
Yeah.
anyway, they must work very hard, I think, all of them, for us.
I think they do, and regardless of your politics, I think you
Oh,
could
yeah.
be proud that they have Vermont's best interest in
Yep.
mind.
Since I've worked for state government and been in Vermont, the staff of all of our congressional delegation is so spectacular.
Yeah.
I mean, they must sign some kind of blood oath or something when they take those jobs, because you say it's for a constituent, they're on it.
Yeah.
And we're very lucky that way.
Yeah.
As much as we've got good congressional delegates, these are the staff, and they're
That's right.
handpicked for sure. They're good.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens at the federal level. I know of some Vermont nonprofits that are already losing funding for some federal grants.
Yeah.
And that's going to mean some choices about employment for folks and whether programs can continue.
Right.
And it's in all the different areas. But we're really in a keep our eyes wide open
Right.
and our ears wide open, and just try and be flexible and
Right.
adaptive.
Nimble, is that the
Nimble. That's right.
New word. Well, I do feel bad for all the people that they're just, programs gone. I mean, this is Washington, D.C. Where the heck do you, not so many jobs floating
We
around.
called down to the USDA Northeast Region office in Boston. We had an issue we needed to talk to them about, and half of their staff has been fired.
Wow.
So it's just going to be harder to get answers to the
Yeah.
questions we need
Maybe
answered.
they'd like to come up here and work.
Maybe.
Maybe we
We
should-
just need some housing for them, right?
Minor problem. Oh, that's another show. This housing issue, and you mentioned mental health. That to me, the food issue is one thing, but the mental health issue, I just don't know what the answer is. It's really sad, and it
is.
shows itself everywhere.
It does.
It's not just one area. It's just everywhere, at every level. A lot of challenges in our lovely little state.
Yeah, but we have a lot
we
of
do.
good people working
do.
on them too.
We do.
So,
Yeah.
I'm hopeful. I couldn't be in this job if I wasn't hopeful.
Well, you've been there. What did you tell me? 13?
16 years.
16 years. Wow,
Yeah.
that's cool. We met in A&R
Oh yeah. Okay.
years ago.
Yep.
And then when you went, I actually thought that was like, whoa, that was quite a jump from A&R to the food bank.
Yeah.
But if you're a good manager, as the governor always says,
That's right.
you can manage anything.
That's right. It's about it's when I remember in my interview talking about, well, it's about managing people and managing money.
You can do it anywhere.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So he was right, because you've done a great job.
Thank you. I
You really
appreciate
have.
that.
So tell me again about how we can help you with this, because you're gonna see my name.
Yeah, the food security roadmap in Vermont.
Okay.
Just reach out. I would say look at the roadmap.
Yep.
We will get a website up so people can know what we're working on in the legislature and how to be able to support that. And you can email me through info@vtfoodbank.org and ask about the roadmap.
Okay, great.
And you can find out all about the food bank, including how to donate, how to volunteer, how to advocate at vtfoodbank.org.
I only have a few minutes, and we talked about this years ago, but I've never seen it done again. I attended an exercise where you were one of three categories: poor, middle class, or wealthy.
Yeah.
And then they had different scenarios of
Yep.
what happened, and it turned out that the middle class always helped the lower class, but the upper class never helped anybody. And do you remember that?
I do. I've done that.
I-
I've done that simulation a number of times.
Oh, I wish we
Yeah.
would do it all over, because that's another lesson learned.
Right. Well, it's one of those lessons that I think we all need to relearn, because, we all have hardships in our lives, and it's easy to kind of downplay the hardships of others. Well, yes, that person, but why aren't they working? And my life is hard too, and yes, your life is hard too, and that's the equity discussion, right?
Right.
But we want that neighbor to be a productive, contributing member to our community. In order to do that, they might need a little bit more support. So in the long run, it's cheaper to give them that support early.
Right.
And I never want to dismiss or downgrade anyone else's hardship or how hard they work to get where they are.
Because you never know when that door closes.
That's right, and you know
don't.
we've all worked hard to get where we are, and in some way or another, and just to respect that difference.
That's great.
I think that simulation helps people.
I wish they
see
would do that everywhere, and I wish
Yeah.
they should do it at the legislature.
Legislature.
Wouldn't that be great?
I don't know if you could wrangle those snakes into.
Well, I don't know, but that'd be a heck of a discussion.
I should say herd the cats. They're not really snakes.
Yes, cats.
They're cats.
But that was that hit home.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few things. Anyway, thank you, John Sayles, for joining us. This has been fun. Don't be a stranger. I'll have to call you more often.
Please do, Pat.
Yeah,
I'm
really.
happy to be on, and it's a pleasure to talk to your viewers.
Thank you. Excellent. Thanks for tuning in. This is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the soundbites. See you next week.